Welcome to our Earth Day 2022 event, how emerging brands embrace sustainability and how established ones could learn from them. We're gathered here today to celebrate the 52nd edition of Earth Day, and it's not exactly a happy birthday. Sadly, you've all heard about or read part of the latest IPCC report, and there's not much to celebrate about. There's a few things each of us can do, like get rid of single-use plastic or keep our smartphones a bit longer than 2 years. However, some companies are taking much bolder steps for our environment by making the desired outcome a foundation for their business itself. And we're going to hear about a few of them tonight. So please join me in welcoming our 7 speakers for tonight. Steve Bidinger, founder and CEO of Skai Beauty Incorporated. Kentaro Otani, Rika Soya, Mimi Yamanaka from TRANSMEDIA Co Ltd, editor of Estica Web Magazine. Jim Huang, director of P Lab KK. Pepe Costa, founder and CEO of Ziosh.com, CEO of RetechCycle.com, and CEO of Augusto Bellini. Tadashi Kubo, CEO and co-founder of AC Biode. Stéfan Ledoux, representative director and CEO of Codo Advisory. And Maximilien Petitgenet, founder and CEO of Purple Pepper. One last thing before we start, please kindly mute yourself off while speakers are presenting and enter any questions that you might have for our speakers in the chat window. We'll have a Q&A session at the end. So since the agenda is quite packed, I'd like to start right away with an emerging brand, actually more than emerging. I'd like to invite as our first speaker, Steve Bidinger, founder and CEO of Skai Beauty Incorporated. And Steve, I believe you have a big announcement for us today. So Steve, 2 questions for you, and I'll have similar one for our following speakers. Can you please briefly tell us about your brand? And can you tell us about the game-changing innovations that you're implementing?
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Steve. I'm the CEO of Skai Beauty. Okay, so as Stefan mentioned, he asked me as a new brand to talk about how we're trying to be sustainable. I'm making a direct-to-consumer brand that will be launching in Japan during this next month or 2. We're starting with hair care, which we characterize as clean and sustainable. And we're focused on direct-to-consumer, which means online only, and for self-care and wellness at home. And our target is broad. It's women and men of all ages. And by clean beauty, we're focusing on being organic, natural, vegan, and eco-friendly. So most of our ingredients could be characterized as that. And we've partnered with a great company in Italy that has an organic farm, and they specialize in making hair care for salons around the world. This just gives you kind of a preview of our shampoo and treatment. A couple of our key ingredients are flax and mullein, which are grown on their organic farm. We're certified as vegan. Our bottle and tube are made with sugarcane from Brazil. So I will explain that. That's the focus of my talk today. Again, we're trying to adopt and follow the UN social goals. We also are starting with hair color, but I won't explain that today. So this is the focus of my short talk. So as I said, most of our ingredients are nature derived. Our treatment, in fact, is 95%. And when I talk about being natural, it's not that I'm against man-made or synthetic chemicals, but nature has a way of providing functional and sensory benefits. So whenever possible, we're going to try and be natural. And as I said, our 2 main ingredients in these products are organically grown. And a lot of people confuse natural, organic, and other things. So organic, just as a quick definition, means when you're growing it on the farm, and then when you're extracting it in the factory, you're not using any synthetic chemicals. And then we're certified vegan, and that basically means that we're using plant extracts and ingredients, nothing from humans, for example, like collagen. We're not using any genetically modified organisms. And I won't go into the details, but there are a lot of ingredients that you're not allowed to use if you're vegan. The next point is kind of the focus of what I'm doing today. So with our bottles and tubes, they're made from Brazilian sugarcane. And we chose that because sugarcane is a renewable resource. And it's probably one of the best plants in the world for absorbing carbon dioxide from the air. And unlike regular plastic, which is typically made from petroleum or oil, sometimes from natural gas, that emits greenhouse gases during production, and it's not a renewable resource. And then lastly, our biomass plastic is 100% recyclable. So if you can think in terms of, a virtuous circle from cradle to grave, we start with a renewable resource. It's very eco-friendly during production, and then it's 100% recyclable. When we're doing things like cartons and boxes, we're using what is typically called FSC paper. And that means that the forests are responsibly managed. And then lastly, we're not using this yet, but one of the things we're working on is something called Limex. This is an innovative material from Japan, where instead of using lots of trees and waters to make paper, they're making, and this is a very nice slogan of theirs, paper from stone. So limestone is a very abundant resource, and they're able to make carton and plastic from the Limex. So we're working not only on cartons, but the bowl and brush that we're going to be using for our hair color, we hope to, within the year, come out with plastic made from Limex. And that's really the end of what I'm doing. So again, our focus is, as a new brand, we're trying to use natural, organic, vegan, and eco-friendly ingredients. In particular, our packaging, we're focused on the biomass. And going forward, we're going to try and be doing more and more with things like Limex and similar innovative materials. Okay, that's my presentation.
Thank you very much, Steve. Well, thanks for kicking it off in a big way. So for our next, thanks for keeping the time. So for next speaker, I'd like to invite Ethica, and I'm particularly happy to welcome Kentaro Otani, Rika Asoya, and Mimi Yamanaka from TRANSMEDIA Group with us tonight. And that's for two reasons. First of all, because you guys pioneered the introduction of an ethical publication in Japan, which is called Ethica, Good for Me, Good for the World, which you guys launched in 2013. And second, because you've agreed to share with us some of the dozens of innovative companies that you recently came across. So, and third of all, because you are actually our media sponsor for the night. So can you guys please elaborate on these subjects? And first, maybe a word of welcome by Otani-san.
Okay. Hello, my name is Kentaro Otani, CEO of TRANSMEDIA and Editor-in-Chief Skai. It is a great honor to be here amongst you. I'll now hand it over to Ms. Asoya. Thank you.
Thank you, Otani-san. Steve, can you stop sharing your screen, please? So Asoya-san, go ahead.
Okay. Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Rika Asoya, the community manager of Skai. Today, one of our team members, Ms. Yamanaka, will share our activities and visions from the past 10 years to the next 10 years. And she will share also trend information of SDGs and summary introduction of SDGs. I hope we can give you some ideas on the Skai consciousness of the younger generation in Japan. I'll now hand it over to Ms. Yamanaka. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Mimi Yamanaka. It is such an honor to join today. Quickly introduce myself to you. This is This time I will be talking about Transmedia, and it's a web magazine brand called Ethica, which I have been associated with a writer and a designer since the grand opening in 2013. I recently moved to Netherlands, and I am joining this event today from North Brabant province, which I assume not many people here know. So firstly, let me introduce our company. Transmedia, we are a company founded in 2012 in Tokyo, Japan, by Kentaro Otani. He just greeted you. To support business development, including producing IT content, design, and corporate branding that we recognize ourselves as a brand experience provider. We started our businesses as a creative agency, and we are now having 5 companies. All these specialize in supporting companies and projects with sustainability and ethical characteristics. And Ethica, which will soon celebrate its 10 years anniversary, is one of our fundamental activities launched a year after the company's foundation. And additionally, we are also the media partner for the annual International Conference of Sustainable Brands in Japan since 2018. Okay, so Ethica is a women's web magazine launched in 2013 with the keywords "good for me, good for the world" to raise people's ethical awarenesses in daily life. Ethical trends in fashion, celebrities, products, work, and any life matters are covered in our magazine. 70% of our readers are women, mainly young people in their 20s and 30s. Here I show you 2 screenshots of our website for your idea. The article on the left was about very detailed learnings of all new and essential products of People Trees, autumn collection from 2020. The right one was about the new sustainable material and the press information about its latest commercialization. So what is unique about the magazine is that, so I skipped the slide, okay. What is unique about the slide, about the magazine is that it actually does not emphasize ethical consumptions by pushing the SDGs to the forefront, but rather it introduces high quality and trendy products, both materially and ethically, to the consumers with a high information literacy, who choose what is naturally good, thereby adding motivation to their daily shoppings. I would say we are trying to sound very neutral in this magazine. Although, of course, this might bring a gap from the current international tone of we must act now, but it is vital to raise awareness by providing neutral and natural guidance and encouraging cultural burdens in Japan that values. So Japan values such as individual social contribution and social movements are still often hesitated. So this kind of direction that fits the characteristics of our society is a practical choice for political media like us to survive. Recent years, we have not only focused mainly on ethical consumption, but also have exclusively interviewed a number of internationally oriented role models who are intelligent, confident, and empowering our young readers. Encouraging women human rights is universal. And in Japan, sadly, there is a tendency to negatively perceive women, especially young women, as being political, intellectually solid, and independent. So we respectfully highlight women's opinion that clearly counter such a culture. In this slide, the woman on the right, Sayla Kunikida, for example, is a half French, half Japanese model and actress we have delivered 8 articles on her way of life facing feminism, SDGs, and how she builds her identity. Okay, so I'm talking about looking back at the past decades at the people's ethical consciousness. So 10 years ago, the terms SDGs and ethical choices were almost unknown. However, the word SDGs have now been included in elementary school textbook since 2020, and so in high school since 2021. And some researches shows that Japanese awareness of the SDGs has increased to 80 to 90% in the past few years. The terms are highly recognized, of course, especially among young people such as Generation Z and Y. Even these charts comparing the awareness of the SDGs among Generation Z and Y in 3 countries shows how great Japanese attention is. On the other hand, within the same survey, Japanese young people do not show a deep interest in understanding SDGs compared to those in US and China. This indicates, yeah. Okay. And what is more disturbing is that of those who were asked which of the 17 goals of SDGs they think they could contribute with, Japanese were the least likely to be motivated to contribute. And you can see the very right chart shows the highest number of things they had nothing to collaborate with in Japan. There is a remarkable lack of understanding of the essential purpose of the SDGs, contribution through practice and interest, indicating the need to disseminate more and further information and more personal experience provided by public media. So we believe that for the next 10 years, Ethica will aim to become an interactive media that is even more connected to fans and real life than we are now. Here are some ideas and projects that we have already been working on and would like to evolve more. We developed digital signage in beauty salons nationwide, already receiving 1.8 million views per month. We also cooperated in opening a cafe in Omotesando, a fashion street in Tokyo where people can experience ethical choices. The storefront is the area we want to focus on the most. We will support companies that agree with the concept of Ethica. Regarding IT platform, we will focus on more live content such as Instagram and community building such as the salon and influencers. Yep. We aim to increase the number of readers of the web magazine from the current 30,000 to 100,000. So I go really quickly. So finally, I'd like to pick up some recent innovative creators that are highly compatible with our magazine. The first is Spiber, a bio venture company. It is developing brewed protein, an artificial structural protein of natural origin. This material does not remain for a long period of time like existing fibers. The second is Mongata Corporation, founded in 2019, which has developed technology to recycle discarded cosmetics into watercolor paint, and is working with major cosmetic brands such as Costa and Kao to reduce the vast amount of waste that exists in the cosmetic industry. The third is Mos Burger, a major fast food brand familiar to Japanese people. In March 2022, Mos Burger began selling coffee products roasted using biocorp from Kinki University and coffee importer Ichiko Trading Corporation. 30 to 40% of the coffee beans used in most burgers are grown by disabled people in Brazil. Our magazine covers topics such as the ones I just introduced. If you're interested, please visit Ethica JP. Thank you very much for your time today. I'm sorry to over time a little bit. I finished here.
Thank you so much, Yamanaka-san. Yes, so the bell, sorry, but the bell is timing every speaker for our attendees to know, so that we try to stay within the bounds. So definitely, please, everyone, go to ethica.jp for more of such examples. And thanks again for this, Yamanaka-san, Asuya-san, Otani-san. Thanks for these data, also useful, so we have awareness, but we don't have concern and people's understanding that they can actually take action. And thanks again for your support to this event. Now, in the next section, for the three next speakers, actually, I'd like to invite some materials and technology providers which can benefit brands who want to make the switch. So for the first speaker, I'd like to invite Jim Huang of Peel Lab to the floor. But before that, Jim, I believe you have a video you want me to show.
Hi, I'm Miles Chu, in charge of business development here at Peel Lab. At Peel Lab, we are your one-stop provider for plant-based leather upcycled from fruit and vegetable material, serving brands and corporates. Global warming and animal cruelty are the two most pressing and pertinent issues the world faces. Using our upcycling technology in turning fruit and vegetable scraps into plant-based leather and our reliable manufacturing processes, we are a one-stop solution for vegan leather products, including material and manufacturing for corporate customers for an attractive price. The numbers are significant in terms of what we're pursuing here. And the reason why we chose this market is because of its considerable market size in relation to our beachhead market of brands and corporates in Japan. But also as equally important is the fact that our technology is unique in the creation of our plant-based leather. In addition, there exists a number of multinational companies in Japan, which will give us accessibility to global partners in our quest to expand throughout Asia Pacific in the years to come. Our value proposition to our customers is that we give corporate customers an environmental friendly, guilt-free, and cost-efficient alternatives to leather with the convenience of custom design and manufacturing. Peel Lab is the third option, away from the traditional synthetic and real leather. We're ultimately here to provide quality and affordability for the mass market, so everyone has a sustainable choice when it comes to leather products. As mentioned, our B2B product is a one-stop solution. The possibilities are endless. We provide our plant-based leather, raw material, and manufacturing with client designs for the co-creation of products. Our previous products range from fashion items, such as bags and wallets, to menu covers, to pet collars. Our mission is to provide any businesses or individuals with easy solutions to replace traditional animal and synthetic leather with our plant-based leather. Initially, we believed that millennial Japanese customers care about sustainability. We also thought that customers are into adjusting their lifestyle to be more sustainable, and that plant-based leather is a relatively new and foreign concept to customers. Upon talking to 100 millennials in Japan, aged between 28 and 45, we came to realize that customers are very excited about the prospect of plant-based leather products. And as it turned out, aesthetic and unique design is important to customers, but also that they care a lot about the purpose and values of a brand. In 3 to 5 years' time, we will have a market share of 40%. And although our financial model predicts a pretty big 1,000 players, we believe that our first mover advantage will always enable us to innovate and stay ahead of the curve. Furthermore, we're more than willing to work with businesses that are interested in our plant-based leather, and in creating such win-win situations, we can own a market share of 40% of the plant-based leather industry. By replacing animal and synthetic leather with our eco-friendly and low-impact plant-based leather, we truly believe we can considerably mitigate climate change and save animals' lives. We look to reduce CO2 emissions by 595 metric tons in our first year of business alone. Our core team consists of 4 team members with a vision, business, and international exposure to take Peel Lab to the next level. Our dream is that by 2030, we will replace 5% of all animal leather products in Japan with our plant-based leather, and further in Asia by 2050. We want to become a leading sustainability educator by hosting 1 monthly educational initiative to raise awareness about animal rights and climate change. Ideally, we will also achieve 10 times our current valuation by 2025. Last but not least, we want to provide a convenient platform to source animal-free vegan leather and empower individuals and corporates to making the right ethical choices for a better world.
This is our pineapple leather here. I don't know if you guys can see it.
Leather made of pineapple fiber. This is just,
Yeah, exactly.
it just blows my mind.
And then this is our coconut leather that's made from the coconut husk. So this one, our pineapple leather is in production already. So we have a monthly capacity of 100,000 yards, and our coconut leather, we're now looking to scale up that commercially in the next 6 to 12 months. So right now, some of the products that we have in the store will be the yoga mat that's made from bamboo. So I think the ladies would love that. And then we're also making some tote bags just to showcase what you could do with the material. So that's all kind of work in progress as we speak. And I love Stefan's T-shirt. That's something we made as well. So thank you for your support.
Yeah, I was hoping that you'd be talking about the future of T-shirts, because this is actually not made from one of your materials. You just designed the logo, I understand, right?
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah. So we definitely, that logo. So we want to be the next material and the next alternative, because I think there's a lot of new materials out there, and we want to be one of the options. And we are the first ones here in Asia, so we do have that first mover advantage. We source our raw materials also here in Asia, and manufacturing done here in Asia. So that gives us a much better cost competitiveness with others. And we already have customers like in the furniture industry, in the shoe industry, and even people are making teddy bears from our materials. And so the application for this is the sky's the limit when it comes to application. Thank you. I'll stop here.
Thank you so much, Jim. So our next speaker is based in Spain. Yeah, I'd like to welcome Pepe Costa, founder and CEO of Ziosh.com, CEO of RetakeCycle.com, and CEO of Augusto Bellini. And this is also very smart technology here.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. And yeah, I will kind of concentrate on Ziosh today. Okay, and later we can talk about the other projects. Basically, we are a company born back in 1984. We were in the textile world since then, trading, selling fabric, selling garments. And back on 2014, we discovered the pollution of the microplastics, and we said, wow, this is kind of cannot be, right? So let me share a brief presentation, right? So we work on this Ziosh, which is a solution for keeping oceans free of microplastics. Basically is because when we talk of synthetic garments, they shed micro nanoplastics when washing, also when wearing, and some of them on the thousands in each wash, okay? So when we talk of micro nanoplastics, it means very small, tiny objects, and invisible to the eye and really difficult to remove. And as garments get old and used and washed, there is some of them which accelerate the microparticle emission. And this is, it can be that the more we wash, the more we can be polluting the oceans. And why this is a problem is because some of the microplastics that end in the oceans, because they are very, very tiny, can take hundreds of years to get dissolved and disintegrate. And because they are so tiny, it means that goes from plankton to fish to mammals, birds, every living thing in the ocean gets affected. Okay, and this is a really big issue, big concern for human health. I have some data of some scientific data which maybe I'll share later on, not to be brief, or because really we can find in the blood, we can find in the placenta, we can find in the lungs. I'm not talking of things that are not happening. This is happening. This is being so recently studied. Okay, and this, at least in Europe, I can tell also in the US, I'm for sure in Japan will come for sure. There is going to be a lot of regulations, legal regulations on the microplastic emission, on the microplastic pollution. In Europe, I can tell you it's going to be very, very strong regulation. It's already in the law. Okay, so basically, because we don't see this pollution, the fashion and the textile users, or fashion brands, textile users, they don't know, when, how, and where to properly recycle the garments at the right time. Okay, so our solution, these are our why we build this. It's first of all, we want to educate the fashion users on this problematic. If people is aware of this problem, basically they can be more responsible, more sustainable. Okay, and this is our main mission basically now. Also, our system that I will explain how it works empowers consumers to know when to recycle, thinking or bearing in mind the microplastic pollution. Okay, we also help these fashion brands to be sustainable and to reduce or prevent the microparticle pollution because there's this coming regulation to their marketplace, to their business model. And because our system works, we can become the part of the infrastructure for a circular economy. Okay, how it works, we patented and designed a label that changes color with the washes. Okay, because there is a direct correlation between the number of washes and the microparticle emission. So we can program to different temperature ranges and different number of washes when this label changes color. And when this change of color occurs, then QR code becomes readable. Okay, if the end user scans this QR code through our platform, we put in contact fashion brands and the fashion users to see the way or find a way to better recycle the garments at the right time. Okay, so with our solution, the garment is properly recycled and we go into circular economy. Okay, well, briefly, 36 years experience. We have these capabilities and technology to do this. Okay, for the brands who are interested, our business model, we have kind of different charging points. We have to test the fabrics to see the evolution of the microplastic emission on the washes. We have kind of label pricing. We sell labels. Those labels we provide. We are producing with a multinational, so we are able to serve worldwide. If the case in Japan, we can serve in Japan. If the production is in Vietnam or in China, we can produce from these countries as well. Then we have this platform usage because we give a platform. This is a service. This is not a label. It's a label, but it's a service. We give 2 years retention in our platform, and then if you want to extend the retain, the SKUs in the platform, then there is a small fee. We're talking of really cents of a dollar, let's say. So it's not a big cost. Well, different charges that we have here. Let us tell a little bit about our value proposition. Is what I said on 2025. In the EU, it's by law now that have to recycle 55% of the textile waste. They are now implementing the APR, called Extended Producer Responsibility on the textiles. Means that all the fashion brands have to remove the old garments and they have to recycle them. They cannot burn it out. It's a very tough regulation coming in. So for companies, our solution helps them improve sustainable measures. They can monetize the next cycle of clothing because at the end of the life of the garment, they are able to contact with the end user, with the fashion user. So imagine they say, listen, you are now recycling this sport pant. Okay, maybe you need another one. So at this point they can make an offer. So it's a tool to monetize also this. Of course, recycling all clothes, and bear in mind that companies that contaminate, they have to pay. Just to make a figure, 100 billion clothing items produced yearly worldwide, of which 60% are made of synthetics, polyester, polyamide, acrylic, and so on. And it's huge. It's a really, really huge thing. Let me share with you some competitive advantage. Okay, this is my QR code if you want, but I would like to share some information on the scientific data which I gather here. Okay, what I told you about first evidence of microplastics in human placenta. This is not me. This is someone who published it. Okay, well, this is some of the drawings of the articles. If someone wants it, I can share the links. They are open.
Yeah, please go ahead. Actually, that's a good idea, Pepe. It's very hard to read and there's not much time, but if you want to drop the link in the chat window, people can have a look at it.
Okay, I think then I'll do like this. Okay, but there is what I said about this human affecting on the microplastics. It's an issue. Okay, this is my presentation, so I'll leave it here.
Thank you, Pepe. I really appreciate that. And I fell in love with your technology, with the idea. I thought, this is not hugely technical. This is like super smart and simple to stop feeding microplastics to the dolphins and the fish that ultimately we eat. Mm-hmm. So thanks a lot for that. So for our next preso, we're going to go much more technical. I hope I understand some of it with the co-founder and CEO of Biode, Tadashi Kubo, who's taking drastic steps to reduce and upcycle the plastic waste and the e-waste that we generate. So Kubo-san, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm Tadashi. I'm co-founder and CEO of AC Biode. So AC Biode is a clean tech startup. We have expertise on chemistry and material science. And actually, we have 3 different technologies and projects. So namely, we are developing some kind of AC battery systems. And also, as you can see here, we upcycle ash into adsorbent that captures different stuff. And also, we upcycle plastic waste chemically from plastic into monomer gas, which is feedstock materials for new plastic chemical products. So briefly, let me introduce the second one, which is upcycling ash. So it's a B2B business, but ash is a big problem from, for example, power plant, from biomass, soil sludge, which everybody has underground water, and also from the mining waste. And what we do is we upcycle these waste into adsorbent, and adsorbent can be used, for example, for like masks, filters, soil improvement, or wastewater treatment. and so on. And also it captures carbon, greenhouse gas emissions, such as CO2, methane, ethane, and so on. So which looks like this. We make powder, as you can see here, from ash or from the waste. I don't want to go detailed today, but right now we have already completed 2 projects in Japan and in Taiwan. And actually we are getting a lot of projects, especially outside of Japan. We got contracts in Thailand, 2 in Australia, 1 from a paper company in Austria, as well as 2 from Kazakhstan. So we are getting more inquiries and also expanding our business as well. So connecting to the other presentations we had today, actually this products can be used to replace microplastic beads for example, cosmetic or beauty products, because this circulite can also capture different stuff, and you can also use this as for a toothbrush or toothbrush paste. So so that we can replace microplastic beads inside as well. Let me also explain the other technology that I explained, which is chemical recycling. I believe everybody knows about the plastic issues, and there are 3 ways to recycle plastic waste in the world, which is mechanical recycling, which is familiar with everybody, such as making clothes, gloves, pet to pet, and so on. But the disadvantage of this is that you can recycle this only a few times. Otherwise, you can't recycle anymore. And when it comes to thermal, of course, everybody uses in Japan and in different countries, but it emits CO2, and you need a high capex, so expenditure for the machines and operation and so on. And the chemical recycling is something different. It can semi-eternally recycle plastic chemically, not physically. And it emits almost locally 0 emissions when it comes to chemical reaction itself. So let me skip for details, but in a nutshell, we are still under development, but working with Osaka University in Japan, and we are trying to tackle one of the most difficult to recycle plastics, which is PE, polyethylene, and PET bottles. And as far as we know, no one has commercialized this technology yet in Japan for PE, and only one for PET. So if we can commercialize within a few years, we can give a big impact in the plastic waste industry, especially on chemical recycling. Yep, that's briefly about what we do. So if you have any questions or some inquiries, just feel free to send me an email or connect to me via social media or website. Thank you.
I'll drop some questions in the chat window, which we can take after that. And so to your last point, I believe, so for PE, for example, for polymers, so essentially what you're doing with chemical treatment is you're breaking these molecules into smaller molecules, into monomers. Is that it?
Yes, and then that monomer can be used as a feedstock at petrochemical complex. So they can, instead of using natural gas or from petroleum, they can use from plastic waste.
Wow, this is exciting. All right, well, thanks a lot for this. And amazingly, we're actually doing well on time, which is actually unexpected. So in the next section of the event, I'd like to hear from our 2 last speakers who are part of this new ecosystem of advisory firms, consulting, support, BPR companies that help corporations implement SDGs. So tonight we're welcoming 2 companies part of the French tech community. Actually, we have Codo Advisory and Purple Pepper. So please welcome Stéfan Ledoux, Representative Director and COO of Codo Advisory.
Thank you, Stéfan. A lot of Stéphans today. I'm in Japan since 2016, working on sustainability and the relationship between Japan and Europe on that. And we started actually very recently Codo Advisory. So in a way, we are a startup, except that we don't have any technology. What we are bringing to Japan is new ideas to move firms on decarbonization. We had our launch event in Fukuoka this week, so it is very new. And our idea is to help Japanese companies, big ones, realize that they need to accelerate and how to do it on decarbonization. The reason we think Japanese companies need to accelerate is that Japan as a country is late on climate action. It's visible in, I would say, any international rating that you look at. Climate Action Tracker, for example, shows that the rating of Japan goes from critically insufficient to poor, depending on what criteria you look at. The International Energy Agency says that Japan has one of the highest carbon intensity of its energy supply among all members of the IEA. And the World Benchmarking Alliance, which benchmarks companies in different sectors, shows that in the electric utility sector, for example, there's no Japanese company in the top 20 out of 50, and no Japanese car manufacturer in the top 10 out of 30. So Japan, despite its image of an advanced country, is late on climate action, both in terms of implementation by policies and industrial development by big companies. I think it's not a problem of technology. We hear a lot big Japanese firms talking about technologies that will solve the issues such as carbon capture and storage, green hydrogen, small nuclear reactors, etc. Those technologies will arrive at some point, but too late for what we have to do now. We had, again, 2 weeks ago, a new report from the IPCC showing that carbon emissions need to peak by 2025. It's in 3 years. So we have 3 years to reach the highest level of emission we have reached in our societies, and then we go down every year. It means we cannot wait for technologies that will be available in 10 years, 20 years. The other reason that for which I think Japan, that the issue of climate action in Japan is not a problem of technology, is that some technologies that are already mature and available are not used at their full potential in Japan. I'm thinking, for example, about renewable energy. There's still a lot of space to use renewable energy more in Japan, or insulation of buildings, something that we are doing in Europe since 30, 40 years, and that is not done in Japanese constructions yet. So technologies are there already, but they are not used. So it's not a problem of technology. It's probably mainly a problem of motivation, and an issue in the sense that Japanese major firms do not feel the pressure to move. So what can motivate Japanese companies to move? There are different sources of pressure that we can think of. The first one can be the vision from top management. It can be pressure for consumers, pressure from regulators, pressure from NGOs. If we start with the first one, it can be the vision from top management. We could imagine that at the top of Japanese companies, we have people who have a strong belief that we need to do something for sustainability and for climate. What you can see on this chart is the average age of corporate president in Japan. It's 59.7 years old. The average age of board directors in Japan is 66.8 years old. So much older than in other countries. And we also know that only 6% of directors in Japanese listed companies are women, versus 25% in Europe or in the US. So basically, the top management is old guys. Now we'll show you a few photos of what's happening in the world these days, and people who think that there's a problem and need to accelerate on climate action. And well, as you can see, it's not old guys, it's young women. So there's a problem in the demographics of Japanese top management in big firms that make it difficult for this top management to really have the vision that we need to accelerate on climate action. Second source of motivation could be the pressure from consumers, people buying Japanese products. This chart shows the replies to a question that was asked to consumers in different countries. The question was, do you agree or disagree with the sentence, I buy from companies conscious of protecting the environment? You can see that Japan is one of the lowest ratio of consumers declaring they buy from companies conscious of protecting the environment, lower than European countries, lower than US, but also lower than Korea, Singapore, Indonesia, China. So even in Asia, Japan is doing much lower. The other problem that we see here is that not only Japan has a low rate of people who agree, but also has the highest rate of people who disagree. It means that Japanese consumer, for a fair share of them, know they are conscious that they do not buy from companies that are environmental friendly. So this echoes to the figures that Mimi from Ethika shared before, with a population which has the knowledge of frameworks like SDGs or the Paris Agreement, but the individual efforts and individual movement is not there. It's not happening. So it won't come from consumers either in Japan. Can it come from regulators? Again, we have a problem here. I take the example here of carbon markets. Carbon market is one of the main two schemes when it comes to carbon pricing, and carbon pricing is recognized globally as one of the most powerful ways to accelerate decarbonization. Carbon pricing can be either a carbon tax, so you have tax on products based on the carbon content. There is a carbon tax in Japan, but it's so low that it has no impact. It's about 20 times lower than the recommended amount globally. So it's as if there were no carbon tax in Japan. And regarding carbon market, well, the first international regulated carbon market was the one in the European Union in 2005, 17 years ago. California in 2013. South Korea was the first one to have a mandatory carbon market in 2015. China launched its carbon market focusing on the power sector last year, but in Japan, still nothing. The Ministry of Economy and Industry has announced recently what we can see maybe as an embryo of a carbon market, but it will be a voluntary scheme only for companies who want to participate. So it probably will not have much impact, because carbon markets, to have a real impact, needs to be mandatory and need to be actually forcing companies to reduce their emissions. So on that and on other public policies, Japan is late. NGOs can be also a source of hope and pressure for an NGO, but for NGOs to have an influence in countries, they need to find echo in the population. When they have campaigns to put pressure on companies, for example, they need to have the support from population so that it works. What we can see on this chart is the evolution of the concern about the personal effects of climate change in different countries since 2015, since the adoption of the Paris Agreement. There's only one country in those 8 countries in which the level of concern has decreased between 2015 and 2021, in Japan. In all other countries here, people are more concerned now than 7 years ago. Only in Japan, the level of concern has decreased. So it won't come from any of those sources. Now there's one more source of pressure that we can think of, and which is the core of what we want to do with Codo advisory, is to use the pressure from international markets. Japanese companies are heavily exposed to international markets, and 70% of foreign investors in the Japanese stock market, 77% of Japanese companies plan to expand their export strategy, and 60% of the current sales of Japanese companies is actually done outside of Japan, including 30% in the US and Europe, where regulations are more and more strict. So Japanese companies have to care about what's happening outside of Japan when it comes to corporate sustainability. Otherwise, Japanese companies will have difficulties. One illustration here is supply chain. Apple committed to full carbon neutrality by 2030 in its full supply chain. Sony is providing sensors for iPhones. Sony cannot be aligned with what Apple is asking by 2030 if Sony is producing its sensor in Japan with factories that use coal. So Sony has been pushing the government 2 years ago, asking to accelerate because of this risk of losing clients, big clients globally that requires decarbonized supply chains. The other source of pressure is shareholders. Shareholders' climate activism is growing worldwide with more and more actions from shareholders, from investors to push companies to improve their plans. It's happening also in Japan now. We had last week an initiative from NGOs against Sumitomo Mitsui Financial Group and also to be expanded to TEPCO and Mitsubishi. So they buy shares to have the right to vote at shareholders' meetings and they submit climate resolutions. What do those players expect from companies? They expect more ambition, better alignment with the Paris Agreement, more science, targets and goals that are based on science-based metrics, and the end of greenwashing, and more disclosure, more transparency on emissions, on plans, and on progress. So what we are starting to do with Codo Advisory is basically explain to Japanese companies what I just explained, that they cannot stay where they are. They need to accelerate. And they need to realize that the world is moving, that investors, clients that use them as suppliers and consumers in international markets will not accept much longer carbon-intensive products. We are developing a series of services from education to empowerment and engagement between companies and investors to drive that dynamic in Japan. And that's all from my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stéfan. Thank you. That can certainly help businesses get up to speed in Japan. So for tonight, our last speaker is Maximilien Petitgenet, founder and CEO also of a very young company, Purple Pepper. So Purple Pepper, I understand, is aiming at providing consulting services that encompass a much wider range of SDGs. We talked just a little bit with Ethica about the 17 SDGs. So we talked a lot after that about fighting global warming and preserving our environment. And Maximilien, please tell us how you see your services in a much more holistic way than these.
Yes, sure. Well, thank you a lot, Stéfan, for your invitation. And also, I'd like to thank Stéfan Ledoux for the last presentations, because I really learned a lot concerning the way Japan is not leading the way towards zero emissions. It's really a shame, but very, very interesting. So, well, let's see how we can also try to help. So let me share my screen. So we've been able to see in the previous presentations some emerging brands and mainly what they're doing for the environment. But please let me first have a brief word of introduction about context, because as you said, sustainability is not only about climate change. So we all know that sustainability will quickly become mandatory. Probably in Europe first, as Stéfan just mentioned. We started already with incentives like the Green Deal and most recently with the Fit for 55 initiative. But anyhow, it will become global at some point. Even if Japan is not willing to do it, it will become global at some point. So it already started, actually. I'm mentioning here the TCFD, but there are a lot of other initiatives going in the same direction. But sustainability is not only about climate change. You probably already heard about the triple bottom line. It says that a company nowadays should not only seek profit, but also act for the planet and the people. You probably already heard about this, the people, planet, and profit slogan. So that's more or less what we call ESG, for environmental, social, and corporate governance, or sometimes CSR, corporate social responsibility, depending. You probably already know this. But when you add purpose to this, then you have sustainability. then your company is sustainable because it cares for the planet, for the people, it generates profit, and it has a mission for the common good. So this is not the Graal, this is not some kind of magic that everyone seeks but never saw. It's actually a recipe to become sustainable. So when you add purpose, planet, people, and profit, then you get Purple Pepper, which is the name of our company. And we offer consultancy and training services to help companies become sustainable. So how do we do that? So let's take a few examples. For example, for the planet side, we offer trainings for employees and top management. Thanks to a 3-hour serious game, remotely possible, we are able to turn employees into climate soldiers. I can guarantee that after such a workshop, they become a positive force to transform the business towards something which is low carbon. They want to act. They want the company to change. They are part of the solution. They can be some of the pressure that Stéfan Ledoux just mentioned before. Then after this, we help the company calculate its carbon footprint. It's the first step to change. You have to know what the emissions of the company are to immediately be able to see what the company should change to reduce its CO2 emissions as a priority. Then we offer consultancy services to help the company go towards a low carbon strategy and reduce its fossil fuel dependency. We're talking about anticipation. So that's briefly for the planet. About purpose, we offer workshops to help the company define its mission. Of course, you know what your company is doing, but on top of what the company is doing, what is the mission? What is the one thing that you want the company to do for the common good? It's not necessarily as clear as it seems. Most of the time, companies have no clear mission for the common good, because it's historical companies that just are doing what they're doing the best, but they not necessarily have defined a mission and a purpose. I'll give you the example of Danone. Danone was the first French listed company to endorse a mission. They defined the mission by bring health through food to as many people as possible. So we are talking about bringing health. Their mission now is to bring health. It's not just selling foodstuff, right? They're bringing health to people. So after that, they considered that, for example, they could not continue to sell things like trackers, for example, because obviously it has no good consequence on health. So they removed these products from the shelves, right? So they reduced the turnover, of course, slightly, but they increased the purpose for all the employees, for the clients, for the stakeholders. And as we saw in the last presentations, in most European countries, USA, Australia, it's becoming more and more a concern for clients. So once we've done this, then we are on the path to get the B Corp label. I don't know for Japan, to be honest, but this American label is becoming famous in Europe as well, as it certifies that the company is using business as a force for good, which clearly is a satisfaction. So we help our clients get this label. Let me also mention what we do for the people side. Well, basically, we help managers become good people. We think that management should not only be a way to get things done. We think it should also be a way to help people blossom, flourish, be proud of their work, love their work, trust each other. We found a method to do this. This method has been written in a book. Unfortunately, the book is in French, but we offer our consultancy and training services in English about this management method that gives freedom to people and gives very good results as well. And last but not least, we are in a capitalist world, right? So companies have to do profit. I had the opportunity to develop a sales method that combines growth and ethics, and this method works. I've been able to rank my former company in the Financial Times ranking as one of the fastest growing companies in Europe. So now I help my clients by training them on this point. And it's also very it's also a big satisfaction for the CEO when you can grow the company, but by selling, but in an ethic way. And last point we saw, it's not necessarily correlated to the other points, but we saw that in most of the small companies, people are used at least part of the time to do things that, honestly, a computer could do that for them. We're talking about double capture, double registration, office tasks that could be automated. The World Economic Forum estimates that 50% of the employees' tasks, 50%, could be automated. That's exactly what we help our clients do, so that after this, they can immediately focus these people on value-added tasks instead of boring work. So basically, that's how we see sustainability, as a combination of purpose, planet, people, and profits. I've been very pleased to share this with you, and of course, should you have any questions, well, please be my guest.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Maximilien. It was always a pleasure to hear you. It was very inspiring, as I was anticipating. I think your vision really helps us all broaden our perspective on these issues. And wish you the best, of course, for the future of Purple Pepper. Now is the question for Q&A, and we're pretty much on time, actually, unbelievably. So please, attendees, feel free to drop any questions that you might have for any of our speakers in the chat window. That's your time to understand more, to exchange with them. And here we have one. I have a question for Stéfan Ledoux. So how will you reach out to companies and make them want to initiate change in their activities and behaviors?
So we have different ways to do that. But basically, as you have understood from my presentation, our idea is to make them scared. We know that they won't move just for the planet or for good, because otherwise they would already be moving, because there's been alerts since a long time on climate and sustainability. So they need another source of pressure. So the message that we bring to Japanese companies when we meet them is what I explained, is that investors, shareholders globally are moving. They are attacking now boards of companies. It happened last year, for example, in the US with ExxonMobil, oil and gas company, which was attacked by an activist fund, a small activist fund, which managed to get the head of 3 directors of the board. Stories like that are happening now every month around the world. So we want Japanese companies to understand those risks. And once they have understood the risks, realize that they can move, and there are methodologies, tools that we can bring to them to improve their transition strategies. So that's really the idea of helping them realizing the risks of not moving.
Thank you, Stéfan. Lauren, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
All right. Do we have anybody else with questions? All right, think about them. Usually it takes a few minutes to have questions. So I have a few myself, actually, because obviously you guys are all very inspiring. And Steve, actually, I have one for you. And I'll have the same one for another speaker, actually. People often say that it's more costly to use ethical material, sustainable material, ingredients, containers than traditional, plastic or non-organic or non-vegan ingredients. So can you give us an idea of how much more it costs? What is the extra cost that you have, or in order to have such sustainable materials, or to replace, for example, plastic containers? How much more do customers will have to pay for that compared to if you had been using traditional non-sustainable materials? And you're on mute, by the way. And yes, you're still on mute.
Is it open now?
Yes.
Okay. So I think that the cost differential of using, in our case, the biomass or plastic is very minimal nowadays, because these types of materials and efforts are very common throughout the world. So I really wouldn't say that even goes into my thinking.
This is really interesting, actually, and this is somehow counterintuitive. We as consumers seem to think, oh yeah, well that's good for the planet, but we're going to have to pay. So this is actually not true in the case of your product containers.
Well, that's in our case. And again, I've been doing cosmetics for 30 years, so I worked with partners who are operating at kind of world-class scale. And so that their buying prices are better than, say, a typical small factory might get.
All right.
The other thing, though, is when you look at materials, sometimes it's the unit cost that's a factor. Sometimes it's weight. So, for example, we're studying the Limex, and they may have a bit of a cost differential, but in their case, the weight of the Limex is more than some plastic or carton. So that's a small consideration. So you need to look at the total picture, not just the costs, but other related factors. In our case with the sugar cane, after COVID happened and everybody's having supply chain problems around the world, we found that Europe was having trouble getting sugar cane, but I knew suppliers, factories in China that had been hoarding it. So they had ample supply. So the Italians, their cost was going up, but I was able to find them people who actually had bought the sugar cane. So again, it's not a simple answer, but I wouldn't say that you really need to worry anymore. It used to be 10, 20 years ago to do natural, organic, eco-friendly might have been a problem, but now I would say it's very small.
Thank you, Steve. Actually, while we were talking, there's another question for you about another aspect of procuring such materials. So there's a question from Quentin who says, you're sourcing ingredients and materials from different countries, such as Brazil. How does that impact your overall CO2 footprint? And could some of these be produced or procured locally?
Okay, so the Brazilian supplier, it's a company called Braskem, and they've done, and I'm not a technical person, but they've done that kind of whole total life cycle analysis. I don't know what the term is, but if you take into account, the plants themselves are absorbing carbon dioxide during production, it emits much less, if any, greenhouse gases. So they take into account the freight and all the other factors, and they maintain, again, I don't remember the details, that overall the net impact is extremely beneficial.
Thank you very much, Steve.
And sugarcane, there are other places to grow sugarcane in the world, but Brazil just happens to be the biggest, and these people are the ones that developed, the first kind of leading source of sugarcane for biomass.
Yeah, there's a little bit of sugarcane in Okinawa, actually, although sadly some of it is being replaced, I understand, in the recent years by tobacco for economic reasons, which is a little bit sad, but that's a different discussion. Thank you for this, Steve. That was very interesting. And Quentin says thanks for this insightful answer as well. Jim from Peel Lab, I would have the same question for you. What would be the additional cost to use your incredible leather manufactured from fruit waste? How much more expensive would it be compared to real leather or synthetic plastic leather?
Yeah, thank you. So because we source our raw materials here in Asia and we manufacture them here in Asia, so we have the competitive advantage over others, and we are able to reduce a lot of the logistic costs as well as the carbon footprint, and therefore our price is actually 50% less compared to animal leather out there. And it's a very important mission of ours to make sure that our SDG products are not more expensive than your traditional leather products out there. Because there's a stigma, I think, especially in Japan, that SDG products tend to be more expensive, and we want to remove those stigma from customers. And one of the ways for consumers to switch behavior is actually through the price, and therefore we make sure that when we roll out to the market, our unit economics works for us, as well as we can share that benefit with the consumers in Japan. So that's kind of where we are.
Wow, this is so same kind of response. So it's not going to be more expensive, or actually it's going to be cheaper to use your material rather than a non-sustainable one. So this is extremely inspiring as well. Thanks for that. All right. So any other attendees with any questions, please go ahead. This is your time. Otherwise, I might have one more, and then we'll close the session. Okay, so I'll have one more. So for the attendees, one more chance to think about questions that you might have. So I guess for Stéfan again, back to why Europe is actually has an edge over Japan on the adoption of the decarbonization measures. I was wondering, looking at your deck, you mentioned the kind of 4 or 5 pillars pushing companies to act, were visions from top management, consumers, regulators, NGOs, and pressure for international markets. So according to you, why actually European companies started moving like 10 or 15 or years ago or more, while Japanese didn't? So I don't really tend to believe that top management would be so close to younger female audience as you mentioned. Consumers 10 or 15 years ago, were they really more vocal in Europe? Regulators, NGOs? According to you, what was the reason behind Europe moving quicker?
That's a good question. I would say maybe it's a mix of all of that. So maybe a population that is more likely to ask companies, governments to move. Companies that are maybe a bit more reactive when they hear signals like that, and politicians that also are listening a bit more at those signals. So I would say it's maybe the fact that those different elements could meet at some point that help things accelerate. I think NGOs also are much more influential in Europe. Big international NGOs like Greenpeace, etc., have much more members in Europe than in Japan, and a lot of NGOs in the environmental field are coming from Europe actually. So I think NGOs also played a significant role in pushing. And yeah, what was the first element? I don't know. What is sure is that when we look now at public policies and the level of overall maturity of Europe versus Japan on all of that, I worked before on public policies in France. I've been looking at public policies in Japan. The time difference is 10 to 15 years on plastic waste regulations, on carbon pricing, like I mentioned in the presentation, on renewable energy policies. 10 to 15 years is huge, because we have 3 years left to reach the peak of emissions, as the IPCC said 2 weeks ago. So yeah, and I think culturally Japan is maybe more organized as a top-down society. So if the signal is not coming from the top, there won't be a big move coming from the population. In Europe, we have maybe more bottom-up approach with local governments, people locally that can push their ideas and express through votes to how they purchase products, etc.
Okay. So then we're going to be closing this session. And so before we go, I'd like to thank again everyone for joining. Thanks to our attendees. Thanks to all the speakers for taking time. Thanks to Ethica and Transmedia for being our media sponsor. I can see Otani-san. Thank you very much, Otani-san. Please, everyone who speaks Japanese, go to ethica.jp for more interesting stories. And please connect to, obviously, earthday.org for more ways to get involved. And before you go, please have a look at the survey. You have the QR code right next to me. Please have a look at our survey. And if you can take a couple of minutes to complete it, it will help us improve our future events. So thanks a lot. I hope you found this inspiring. Have a great evening and see you again soon.